Welcome everyone to day 3 of EA Global Summit 2021. This is Juhi again from EA Global Summit organizing team. Thank you everyone for your time and efforts in joining us for this session. This session is by Nizam, presenting about Sparx EA Service Excellence to introduce Sparx EA support services around the globe in deployment, rolling out, training, standardization in Sparx EA tool with 2 case studies. Kindly be informed that we will be muting all the participants throughout the questions, and if anyone of you are having any questions during the session, please use the questions window to drop your question to the speaker. Nizam will answer the questions at the end of the session. To enable further collaboration with Nizam, we request you to visit Nizam's meeting room in MS Teams to have one-to-one communication with Nizam. So thanks once again for your interest and support to EA Global Summit 2021. Over to you, Nizam, now.
Thank you, Juhi. Hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for your interest in joining this session. This is Nizam, and in this session I'm trying to talk about the support network or the support ecosystem that's available for SparxSystems Enterprise Architect users. The reason I chose this topic was, I've been working with SparxSystems in various capacities for the last 15 years or so, and we've been witnessing this support channel to be evolving from almost zero to something really strong and accessible in the recent years. And this has made a stark difference and has driven huge value in a number of organizations. And I was trying to find a resource which summarizes all the support activities that one can look for from the Sparx ecosystem, but I couldn't. So I kind of thought of presenting what we could see and what you could expect from different partners across different parts of the world. So this session may not be the usual informative thing like a product demo or a pain point demo. This is more to articulate what kind of support is available and how involvement of a support from Sparx teams helped course correct a few organizations EA practices. So that's the intent. And I represent SparxSystems and SixForce, and I have, as I said, a fair bit of experience working with Sparx EA, and I've also been engaged with SparxSystems in various capacities. I've been part of a couple of organizations associated with Sparx, and now I'm sort of heading the Prolaborate development and also looking at the support extension for SparxSystems. So I play a few things in the Sparx world. So at times it may look like a shameless plug, excuse me for that, but it's more than just saying what we do. It's more about what is available for people across the world from different partners distributed globally. So I would be talking about a few things that we do, but that's not just us. There's many other people who do the same thing, and it's all about to help EA users to do the right thing. So just before I start, a quick introduction on the Sparx platform. Again, just reiterating that Enterprise Architect is the modeling tool of choice, which is being used by close to about 1 million users as per Tom's statement earlier. And that's the modeling tool of choice. And then with the advent of the REST APIs through PCS and the web publishing platform through Prolaborate, this has evolved itself into a comprehensive platform that stands a good comparable feature set with any other architecture tools that you can think of. But what differentiates Sparx tool and the platform is its flexibility and unbiased support and rollout practices that you can do. There are a lot of large organizations and large tools out there in the market, but you would have to conform to their practices and their expectations as opposed to them conforming to the team's or the organization's needs. So the Sparx approach is slightly different. So we'll quickly look at what is available and how we are different. In terms of support services, I'm going to entirely talk about tool support and not about architecture training or UML training or SysML training, whilst that is also being provided by our partners across the world. I'm going to especially focus on how to take a tool and deploy it and make it usable and drive the best value out of it. So when I talk about such services, the first and foremost thing is about deploying it. So again, if it was just an enterprise architect application, even that required a database behind, a floating license server behind. But gone are those days when there is a on-premise single instance deployed in one part of the team, and people just VPN to it and connect to it. Now we are talking about people working from anywhere through any device. So a Sparx EA deployment with integrations to various other tools in the enterprise landscape with your SSO providers and your SMTP providers and whatnot. That's in itself a task to be to be planned and executed, and that will be one of the primary services that you can look for, because it makes it a lot more easier and faster to do a supported or a aided installation. And then we're talking about implementation assistance, where again Sparx EA is one of the comprehensive modeling platform which supports almost every OMG standard under the roof. However, not every organization would require all those to be available for them to start with. What we need is a careful hand holding to make sure only the right frameworks or the right technologies, and also in those technologies only the right level of details are exposed to the wider teams to make it more usable and adopted by the wider teams. So implementation is also something, if done in the right way, will go way more than ad hoc approach of just taking a tool and playing around with it. So there's implementation assistance that we can look for. And then there is the migration. Again, most of the teams that embark on a new architecture tool are obviously coming from another tool or another practice. When I say another practice, we're talking about the Excels and Words and PowerPoints or Visios of the world, which is being used to document. So there's no way a team could start fresh. Of course, even if you say it's a fresh start, we are still looking at some Excels or Words or Visios lying around. So some planning and a careful analysis of the information in hand will help in building that baseline architecture or baseline model for the teams to continue and maintain. That's a significant step forward as well, because that's where most of the architectural rollout fails. If you ask the architects to go back and do whatever they have been doing in the past using another tool, that's a recipe for failure, because they don't have the time to do it. They'll be really busy with various other things going forward, and you're asking them to do something in the past and redo it. That's not going to work. So you could also avail service where our consultants could help you with planning and executing a migration as well. And then an important aspect is the training. So hand holding the teams and getting them up to speed, removing that inhibition to adopt to a new tool, and also helping them understand the most basic nuances of EA, so that they don't get lost, or they just do what they are expecting to do in an easier way. I've been doing like hundreds of trainings in my career, and almost every time I say this, like at the end of the training, I don't expect them to remember every clicks and options that we speak about, but the objective is to get out of this room comfortable with the tool, so that you could start trying anything that you wanted to model. And that training plays a key role. And there's various forms and shapes of training, flexible training plans that are accessible or available across the globe. And then is the post-deployment part, which is about model administration and governance. This is also a key pain point. When we institutionalize a EA practice, then the challenge is about who maintains the models, who does the governance. Of course, if we do the implementation and training in the right way, you would have a lot of governance practices already incorporated into your modeling practice, but still you could have experts assisting you with on-demand model administration or maintenance as well. And then there is the additional premium technical support. If you are targeting you have gone live and there are business users who are using EA for various purposes, and then you want someone who could just jump on a call with you guys or jump on a meeting to resolve an issue. The premium technical support, which is also available in various flavors and combinations and flexible options, like hourly or daily or weekly, could be available, so that you're never left aloof, or you're never in a position where you're lost. So there's always people whom you could tap to and get yourself out of a situation. And then there is continuous application support, which is also like the operational support and the technical support, like tier 2 and tier 3 supports, which can also be available in this ecosystem. So this is just to give a holistic picture of various dimensions that we have been helping EA clients. Like when I say we, I'm talking about partners and vendors and consultants across the globe. We've been working with clients to make sure they are well assisted and always moving forward with the architecture practice, instead of getting stuck somewhere and kind of deciding to roll back to a different approach, which has happened in the past. And just reiterating, why do we need a support? Of course, in an ideal world, you shouldn't need any support. In an ideal world, you should just be able to start using the tool and you should get the best outcome out of it. But unfortunately, we are a little far from an ideal world, and we definitely need to have the expertise from these consultants who have years and years of accumulated experience implementing EA in different scenarios, in different industry verticals. And then, as I said, deployment is a key challenge. The right deployment at early, in the initial stages would solve a lot of issues. Like, we have seen even largest of the organizations, largest of the teams trying to do EA deployment for the distributed teams, and they might not have gotten everything right, and that will cause enormous dissatisfaction amongst the team, and the rollout will be inevitably a failure, because people won't be comfortable working with a sluggish or a slow environment, or losing the data, or unable to back up. All these happens if it isn't done the right way. So a proper deployment plays a key role, and so is implementation. So if you just start with any tool for that sake, and that to a modeling environment like EA, which supports a whole raft of frameworks, if you just start with it without a careful analysis of your requirements and configuring EA to work on your requirements, it's again going to be boiling down to a drawing tool. Like, people will start doing what they are comfortable with, instead of adhering to a standard like a standard meta model or a strict meta model. So, and proper implementation with some careful analysis of your requirements, business objectives, and defining a meta model that delivers to the business objectives would make EA well packed and very well focused on those objectives. So that implementation support is something that is I would say mandatory. There should be someone in-house to do that analysis and implement. If not, you should probably reach out to someone who could help us with it. And then, as I said, business support. When an application is in production and it requires operational and technical support, you always need to have an app support team who is ready to take queries, address them immediately, or in the worst case, if it can't be mitigated, at least escalate to the backend team. So such support should be either set up internally or it can be availed. Like, there are a number of clients who have taken like a annual tier 2, tier 3 support from us, so that any EA related queries are entering into our ticketing system, and it's been handled with stringent SLAs, that like same day response, immediate resolutions, or getting on a call. So it's given that utmost priority to make sure people who are embarking on an EA practice are never left astray. Like, that's a very important aspect of rolling out an EA practice as well. So a support is definitely needed in one form or the other when we are talking about a serious EA implementation. And to kind of illustrate how or the importance of having a small bit of support. So I'm not talking about outsourcing your modeling activity, or I'm not talking about like, just having someone employed and do it full time. I'm just talking about some guidance here and there could set the course right for a number of teams. And these two case studies which I'm going to talk about are something that we have worked on, and have, I have to mask the names in terms of I mean, due to confidentiality, but these are real case studies where we have made we have played a small role but made a big difference in the way it was done. So one is a large bank in the APAC region where they've been using EA for more than 10 years, but the implementation was done by a small team of 3 to 4 people. And I would say they were one of the smartest people I have come across. They are like, really competent technical EA experts, but that kind of expertise also had its own challenges, which we will see. And then there was emphasis on meticulous standards, conformance, and completeness. And we'll see what was caused due to an implementation like that and how it was mitigated with some efforts. And the second case study is a really large logistics company where they had an on-premise deployment which was, or which could have been done in a much better way. But the intention was to roll out EA across the globe for all their consultants, and also to make it available to their end users to view it through browsers and look at the processes and requirements that are modeled. But an unmanaged central repository and a subpar deployment kind of resulted in a bit of a chaos, and we'll see what was that and how it was mitigated. So these two case studies I'm going to quickly look at. So in scenario one, where it's the bank that I'm talking about, just to set the context, the team was, the entire modeling practice was set up by a core team who were extremely smart, highly competent, very technical people who knows TOGAF and Archimate in and out. And the problem is the rest of the modeling teams were mostly, coming from a Visio background or a PowerPoint background, and they didn't have a lot of exposure to architectural tools. But those are the teams who need to deliver results in a really rapid manner, because it's a very strong agile practice, and they have fortnightly sprints where something has to be delivered in an incremental manner. So we could see that there is two contrasting teams or dynamics in the team. And then the EA repository was again set up by the small handful of people who are the experts, and there were almost 6 to 7 large programs of work who were using or trying to use EA, and there were 100+ modelers who were trying to use EA to create diagrams, but none of them were making its way through the stringent review process. Everything were rejected, and it was not approved to go into the central repository. And what that caused, or what that ended up, was those people started using the Visios and other tools in lieu of this, because they had their commitments to deliver. So that was like a chicken and egg, or a catch-22, where we need the conformance, but we also have to appreciate the time or the deadlines that they had. And the third thing about EA repository was they were using the technical TOGAF notations to model their business application and information and technology layers. The model was very comprehensive, but it was full of stereotypes and tagged values and connectors and connector stereotypes and things like that, which is not very strange for a EA person. But the challenge was the notations were deemed to be too technical. Like, the diagrams were not accepted by the business users who need to look at it. And they were also, as I said, like they were part of an agile paradigm, and then they had to deliver something really quickly, but the stringent review and conformance was preventing them to make their models to the production environment. So they were kind of reverting to the Visio sort of approach. And obviously you would know driving a change isn't easy in any organization, and the major blow, or the alarm was set when one of the person who was part of this 3 to 4 person 4-member team wanted to retire. Like, he called it his day and he said he's gonna retire, and that's when all bells went off, and the alarms were set, and that's when they realized, hey, this practice is not going anywhere if this person moves on. And at that point, we were kind of requested to help them. And what we understood was, this is not a very uncommon problem in any organization. This is the problem where we want to make EA, I usually call it dumbed down EA to an extent that it's almost like a Visio. So that's exactly what we tried here as well. So we tried to dumb down, or make it as easy as a Visio with just one stencil and all the items that they need to model in that one stencil. And there shouldn't be any ifs and buts while modeling. So if I am trying to connect application component to an application collaboration using the Archimate 3, I would have 10 different connector types shown here, and that was a nightmare for many people because they didn't have a clue of what needs to be done there. But what we kind of did was, what we can do with EA is to define a meta model and say how these two should be connected, and the quick linker will only show that one connector. So that kind of eliminates all the complexity in choosing what is the right type of connectors that needs to be used. So although thought process eliminated, you could see that if I try to connect a L0 capability or an L1 capability to this application, EA wouldn't work, but an L2 capability is expected to connect to an application, and that's when it will show the toolbox to say, hey, you can connect it through an association. So making or removing this thought process from the architects and making it as simple as a Visio was our primary focus. And then we started introducing all the business friendly diagrams. I wouldn't call this 100% business friendly, but this is as technical as it can get. At the same time, it's not too off for a business user. But we also introduced all the pictures and fancy images to help them model the same thing that they were doing in the past. At the same time, pleasing the business users who were just looking at some PowerPoints or expecting some PowerPoints. So we did that bridge between those. And then what we also did was, there were several tools in the landscape used for different purposes, and it was not helping at all. So we implemented the necessary integrations with all their app inventories and CMDBs and data modeling tools into EA to create that consolidated EA repository. And then finally, that kind of worked. We did 1-day training for a number of architects. So 1 day was the max we were able to get from those teams. And within 1 day, we have to give them a heads up and bring them up to speed, which was possible because we almost dumped it down to nothing. Like, it's just one stencil, do this, do this, do this, and that's all they need to focus on. And we also established a multi-tier IT support to do the business and operational support and model maintenance, so they are always supported. So if someone is not sure, if even they are not able to generate a document or publish an image, or there's something wrong with Prolaborate, any query, they'll be immediately assisted either via an email if it's an immediate resolution, or via a call, or even model maintenance and things like that. So we prove to them that it's fully supported. So if they embark on this tool and go with their projects, they wouldn't be left alone, or they wouldn't be stuck anywhere. So that kind of trust was something that we built with all these measures. and that kind of changed the game. And now we can see that practice is quite mature, and there's a lot more people who are actively contributing to it. So this is one thing I wanted to highlight, how a simple, small involvement from someone who could simplify it, or an outsider who could look at the problem and provide a solution, changed the game for this particular organization. And this is the workflow that we have finalized, or like we have kind of zeroed in on after repeated deployments. So this kind of shows, the first and foremost step is understanding what the client needs or what the team wants. What are the key measures that the business expects, and then defining a meta model, and then configuring EA and doing all the other things after that, instead of just starting with EA and trying to do something from the tool. And when we talk about meta model, we are talking about a carefully thought through meta model which spans across all the layers, if it's an enterprise architecture practice, and having the right connector zeroed in between these. For example, in this particular meta model, I have got L2 connected to COTS application. That's what I saw in the image. If I try to connect L1 or L0, it shouldn't work. The architect should not think about connecting this and then someone else figure out, hey, that's not the right thing to do. Better prevent them from doing it. That is governance at the beginning itself. So that is the kind of configuration that we are talking about when we are simplifying EA. So that kind of helped us in minimizing the learning curve and having a very focused user interface that people could be trained really quickly and come on board with and use the tool to do their day-to-day modeling. So that was one case study, and these were all the deliverables at the end of that particular engagement. Similarly, the second thing that I wanted to talk about is logistics firm. As I said, their intention was to have 300 plus architects to actively model across the globe, but because of not the best kind of a deployment, they ended up in a different scenario. So the on-premise deployment was located somewhere in Europe, but then it was expected to be used by teams across the world, and there was severe latencies and delays when people were accessing it through WAN. And then like the diagrams where you might have seen it, when the deployment is not done the right way, you would see EA kind of being a bit slow. It's just the deployment. If done in the right way, it would behave exactly in the way it is in a normal environment. But because of that kind of a deployment, the teams kind of started using localized EAP files for convenience, and the EA repository was a mix of hundreds of EAP files floating around, with no common reference data or no common metadata whatsoever. So that kind of is the result of deployment, is what I would say. I wouldn't blame the architects for doing that, because if they are not able to work on an environment in a seamless way, they would end up in doing what is convenient for them. And there wasn't any of the first few steps that I spoke about. Like, they didn't define a meta model, they didn't do the configuration, they just wanted architects to do the right thing. That ended up in no standards, ad hoc practices, and no consolidated information from those large EA models that were created. And they were just expecting some magic to happen to make it a really, really useful enterprise architecture repository. But with a little bit of support and hand-holding, what we did was, firstly, we had their repository hosted in a private cloud in their environment. Again, they had very stringent security policies which didn't allow them to go to a public cloud, but we helped them set it up in their private cloud, and we had the best of the configuration to allow multi-zone access and high performance scalable nodes. So that kind of helped them solve that access issues. And then we analyzed their model, and we understood most of the EA projects were trying to do only a few things. So we kind of consolidated the most relevant information from all those and came up with a meta model. And then we migrated their existing infrastructure from what they had to the new one. And migration is not as easy as you would expect. one would expect it's going to have its own nuances. We need to do a lot of careful analysis of their existing repository to prevent any data loss, but we were able to execute it with zero downtime. And then we did the model migration. So we took their EAP files, took the relevant pieces that are current, and then managed to migrate it into a central repository. And then there were also loads and loads of BPMN and other diagrams in Visio, which we were able to migrate into EA. So with a very short span of time, I would say, like, 10 to 12 weeks, we were able to do the entire process, and we were able to get them up to speed in a central repository up and running. So in short, both of these case studies are driving us towards having that single source of truth that could be accessed by anyone and worked in a smooth and seamless manner. And to achieve something like that is where all these services that I spoke about in the beginning kind of adds up. So now just reiterating, each of these things that I spoke here were useful in one way or the other in either of these case studies. So that's the kind of a summary that I wanted to present. And what makes this support system unique is, again, I have been actively involved in a number of tool assessments and discussion with multiple vendors. So from my perspective, there is a lot of rigor when we try to approach support from some other popular vendors. We need to really take them on board for everything. Like, we need to listen to them so that they could come and help us. The flexibility factor was really, really low. But what makes a Sparx ecosystem unique is we have partners across the world, and it's quite easy to access them, and you could just get that required support from them instead of trying to go by what they say and totally re-engineering your existing practices and approach. We can just say, hey, please drop in for a couple of weeks, just help us do this, this, and this, and they'll be more than happy to assist. So such accessibility and flexibility is what I have noticed as a key differentiator with the Sparx support system. And then the people who are helping us to do this are also specialists in what they're doing. Like, these are people who've been in the industry or practicing this for years and years. So we are, kind of bringing to bear a lot of implementation experience, and we'll be able to deliver it in a much quicker way. Again, when we try to use some existing big fours or the consulting firms for our support, again, as I said, I've been part of these discussions. What we have noticed is they factor in a huge contingency factor. Like, if the actual effort is going to be 3 months, they would usually code about a year and a half to do the same. With the Sparx support system, you would hardly come across something like that. There are people who really are no nonsense, no frills deliveries. They will just say, these are the things that need to be done, and just deliver on it. And then the reason it's like this and flexible is most of the consultants here are autonomous entities, and they are unbiased. So there's no mandate from SparxSystems to do this, this, and this, or to lock in the clients to something. It's about just assisting people where required to deliver the right things. And we are mostly connected as well. You could see the EA Global Summit is an example of this. We can see consultants from all over the world participating in this and delivering sessions, and they're sharing loads and loads of information and resources with hardly any expectation. So you could see Phil Chudley coming and sharing all the scripts that he has used to automate an MDG. That's probably months of efforts. And there are many people who have, again, shared a number of resources in these webinars. Like, Gillian was sharing the 12 best practices, which again is a training for a day, but that was given as part of these webinars. So that's the kind of openness and transparency and connected nature of the Sparx world. So this is just to say, this has been built by the Sparx in a way because it's not governed centrally, or there's no vested interest in these support. It's individual consultants trying to do their best to support in their region. And to give a quick gist of what are the services, organizations, and sister companies, we almost have like sister companies across the world, like, and service organizations across the world. And the details of this can be found in our SparxSystems website, where like contact details and the services that these people offer. But on top of this, there's also trainers, consultants, and mentors who could, there are close to about 130 different partners who support the EA ecosystem across 80 plus countries, I think. And you could find those details in our website as well, in the SparxSystems.com website as well. And just along these lines, like this was taken from Tom's presentation. Tom, the COO of Sparx Systems, presented, and they just introduced Sparx Systems Middle East. There's been a growing demand for architectural tools, and there's been a number of requests from the region. And as an organization continuously listening to those demands, they introduced the Sparx Middle East. So this was a latest edition that was just introduced on day one of the summit by Tom. And then Sparx Systems also realized that we needed an extended support. So there's been this registered support for almost 20 years, and we've been doing the best that we can to assist users. But then with the growing need for EA practices and additional support, Sparx Systems have contracted with Sixforce. Like, I represent Sixforce, so excuse me if it's looking like a shameless plug, but this is something that Sparx Systems has come up with. The main objective is to make sure the same registered support, so there's no additional cost involved in this, but the same registered support now goes through an extended team who are working with a lot of background and practical exposure as well, and assisting the team with more people looking at your issues. And our expertise is also adding to this. So as I said, I've been with the Sparx world for the 15 years. That's a fair bit of time with the Sparx, and the team that is supporting us is also fairly experienced with Prolaborate and Pro Cloud servers, and assisting a number of EA teams practically implementation side. So that kind of value has been recognized by Sparx Systems, and they have extended their remote their registered support to the remote team. This was again mentioned by Tom, so I have just grabbed Tom's slide and pasted it here. And this, you need to excuse me, this is explicit plug, where it's just, these are some of the solutions that we offer, and we do it on a regular basis. Like, again, many other partners also offer this, but our specialty is around hosting and deploying Sparx solutions on cloud. And the tier 2 and tier 3 support, which is more like an annual application support, that's something that we've been doing for a number of organizations. And all the manual or the laborious work that you could you could think of. For example, if you want to go through some 200 BPMN diagrams and convert them into an EA model, those kind of tasks are something that our team could really assist you with, and development of add-ins or integrations. This is, I mean, I'm going to keep it very short, but this is just a summary to say, on top of all the other support companies and service organizations who are across the world doing this, we also do this, and we specialize on a few things because of our advantage. So as Tom mentioned, we are, we're based off India, where it's all about having more people working on things, and so the laborious or the development tasks that needs to be done is something that we can help with. And that's pretty much what I wanted to share in this session. Thanks, Julie.
Yeah. Thank you, Nizam. That's a very informative session on behalf of all Sparx partners and service providers to Sparx EA user community. So thank you once again. So we are having few conversation which needs your input and detailed explanation, which can happen in Teams channel. So I'll wind down the session here, and I'll wait here for the participants to drop their notes or conversations here. So I request you to visit the Teams channel and take the conversations over that as well, please.
Sure, Juhi, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Nizam, once again, and thanks to everyone for your time during the session. So the speaker will be available in MS Teams, Microsoft Teams, to have a detailed discussions and answer more questions. So thank you, everyone, once again, and looking forward to hosting you all in another session at this summit shortly. Thank you.